Okay, good morning, everyone. And I would like to officially call this meeting to order about 9:03 a.m. on the 25th day of March, I think it is. Welcome to a year plus a bit of pandemic, and hope everyone is keeping well. This is obviously a special meeting of council to confirm the municipal modernization mandate that the province has handed down to the district and then the lower tiers as well. I will note that all members of council are here, as well as our senior leadership team. Thank you for that. We did offer that public comment. People were able to provide comment through email. We did not receive any comments, and there is no supplementary agenda today. But before we start, I do want to acknowledge that we are on lands traditionally occupied by Indigenous peoples. Indigenous peoples have cared for this territory for the benefit of future generations. Their stewardship throughout the ages is certainly recognized. I'll ask at this point if we have any declarations of pecuniary interest. Seeing none, thank you very much. We do have a couple of, or one invited delegation should we need today. I'd like to welcome Amy back, who's our district clerk. Thank you for joining us today, Amy. Hopefully we'll be able to move on, but she's here to answer any questions of district nature. I also, in our meeting today, though camera's not on, like to welcome new to our clerk's department, Chriselle Story. Chriselle is now our land and agreements coordinator. So welcome to Chriselle and those people. And at times we will see her, I'm sure, providing some reports to our council going forward. But this is her first meeting with us today. As we move on, just as a way of introduction, I'm sure everybody is well aware of what's been going on from our modernization committee for the past number of years. Number one, this started for myself and our district councilors back about 6 years ago now. And we put together a modernization committee looking at how we might change district council composition. We made some recommendations at the end of the last term of district council. Those were on our starting point. As district council this term came into effect, we understood that the province was going to step in and mandate some changes. They had hired a couple of advisors. They did some interviews with lower tiers and upper tiers across the province. And then they realized that it was too political, I believe, was their concept. And they pushed it back down to the lower tiers and the districts and regional governments to try and solve the problem ourselves. We started back at the beginning of 2020 under the leadership of Chair Clerk, and we put in place the official committee at the district. I will say things got stalled a little bit due to our world pandemic of COVID, but we got back at it through the summer, made a number of progress. And I know some people are saying that committee unfortunately didn't accomplish anything, but I think we actually did. We learned a bunch. We had some resolutions that moved forward to district council, but ultimately none of those passed when they came to district council. So the only resolution that district council did pass, and that was a week ago and a bit, was that district council would remain at status quo. To follow through with the triple majority, that has to then pass lower tier municipalities as well. And again, for those people who are watching and not understanding, it's a little bit complicated. The triple majority, the first majority is that of the majority of district council. The second majority would be that of the majority of lower tier municipalities, which would mean 4 of our 6 municipalities would have to pass the same resolution. And by default, as soon as you would pass 4 of the 6, you would have the third or the triple majority, which would be the majority of the population, according to the voters registry, in the lower tiers. So we are here today and now, using words of one of our councillors, to evaluate going forward. The district last Monday again did produce a resolution that is to remain at this particular point status quo. We are the 6th municipality. I should probably suggest and do a welcome. I'm pretty sure that many viewers from all the other municipalities, just as our council have viewed many of the other lower tier municipal council meetings as well. So welcome to all of our colleagues across the District of Muskoka who are watching our meeting. But today, first and foremost on us is that to either approve or deny that of the district council resolution, so that can understand it either meets or fails the triple majority. So that's what's before us today. And as I mentioned, that District Clerk Amy Back is with us should there be any questions. But I'll turn it just briefly right now to Council for any questions or comments on process and where we're at to date to get us here. Oh, Councillor Jagowitz.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I actually have a question for Amy Back if she's available through you.
Absolutely. Welcome, Amy, and good morning. Councillor Jagowitz, a question?
Yes, Amy. We're sitting here today, and the other 5 municipalities have tallied their votes. And as I understand it, there's 3 for the motion and 2 opposed. What I don't understand is, I understand, so we kind of have the deciding vote. What would happen if we deferred our decision today and didn't make a decision and asked for some more time to consider our options? What actually happens in that particular case?
Thank you for the question. Amy.
Thank you, and through you, Mr. Mayor. That's an interesting concept I don't think anybody's thought of yet. Should Township of Muskoka Lakes Council not make a decision and we missed the March 31st deadline, I believe unless the minister agreed to a further extension, he would have the ultimate decision as to whether to impose a regulation to change the composition of council.
So supplementary, how is that any different than if we turn this down today?
The outcome wouldn't be different. I guess if a decision is made at the Township of Muskoka Lakes either way, then the review is considered complete, whether triple majority is achieved or not. If you affirm the resolution, District Council remains status quo for the next term of council. If you oppose the resolution, then it's in the minister's hands and he has until December 31st of this year to impose a regulation.
But if we decline this, turn it down today, then my understanding is the triple majority has failed and the minister has the authority to make some change. So in my, and what I wanted to clarify was that in my view, whether we vote it down, if we affirm it, that's one thing, but whether we vote it down or defer it, it's the same outcome. It's not as convenient for you at the district, I understand that. And the only reason I raised the issue is that, as most of you know, the district has been talking about this for a long time, and it's not months, it's years. And this has come to us on very short notice. And we're being asked to make this decision, and I think we will, but I don't know that, I just don't see the rush in it. We should be making a good decision here. And I just wanted to clarify that. Now, there are some that even say this procedure isn't necessary, but I accept the ruling you made that it is. So I just wanted to have that in the back of people's mind as we go forward, that really voting it down is no different than taking time to defer it and come back later. Thank you, Amy.
Okay, thank you for that, Councillor Jagowitz. I'd like to comment that I think there actually is a difference in the fact that is this council in agreement with status quo, or potentially would we like to send a change? A deferral does not send necessarily the minister the same message. We have an ability to say yes or no to the minister and then let them make a decision. A deferral doesn't send a message to the minister other than we're not sure what we want to do. I'll go to Councillor Kelly.
Thank you, and through you, I was first going to just respond to Councillor Jagowitz's notion, and then if it's appropriate, I'm also happy to kick off the discussion about this resolution. But I think Your Worship, you probably gave pretty much the same answer as I was. I think we have a responsibility to our constituents to take charge here and make a decision. Deferring to me is basically abdicating a responsibility that I think we should embrace and run with. As I understand it, on this first resolution, it's pretty much a thumbs up, thumbs down. There's not a whole lot to consider. Once we understand it, we either like it or we don't, and we vote accordingly. So I don't favor the idea of delay. I think we should deal with it and get it resolved today.
I'll cut it off at that if I can, Councillor Kelly, and I'll
Okay.
go to Councillor Evers just for a quick comment to this point while Amy is here. If there are any other questions or
Yes, thank you very much. I agree with the mayor and Councillor Kelly. It's been brought forward, but this hasn't been rushed. They've been talking about this for years, and nobody can make up their mind. We've heard the constituents loud and clear that they don't want this resolution going through. They don't want status quo. I will not be supporting this motion at this time. And thank you.
Okay, thank you for that. I want to sort of back up a little bit, and I appreciate it. Also, our clerk has done a great job in providing us with a report. I won't have her go through the report again. I think it becomes a little bit redundant. I don't mean that because we probably all watched every one of the other council meetings, and we understand that on the table today is basically a resolution that I can read. That if we support the resolution, we believe that status quo is appropriate for the district. And if we are to turn down the resolution, that we believe status quo is not appropriate. And I'll go to Madam Clerk, Ms. Warnerberg. Do you want to add any other further comments to your report at this particular point?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. No, I don't have any further comments. I think it's all been addressed so far. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Jaglitz, I see your hand is up again.
Yes, it is. I just wanted to clarify the reason I asked that question, Mr. Chair. And I agree with everyone that we should deal with it today, the first part. But I wanted to just also stress that the second part we're going to deal with is very important. And you indicated this is our opportunity to tell the world and the minister what we think. And so therefore, although I believe we can vote very quickly on the first motion, it may take some more thought for the second one. Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to, any other questions right now, or can I read this motion? Okay, so I have a resolution moved by Councillor Bridgman, seconded by Councillor Edwards, whereas pursuant to section 2018-6 of the Municipal Act 2001, Muskoka District Council was required to review its composition. And whereas the district has completed its review and passed resolution 59/2021, affirming the current composition, and whereas lower tier councils are required to consider motions of consent with respect to upper tier resolution, now therefore be it resolved that the Council of the Township Muskoka Lakes endorses District Resolution 59/2021. Any further comments or questions? I'll call the, Councillor Roberts.
Thank you, Mayor Harding. Yes, would I ask that this be a recorded vote?
Thank you for that. Madam Clerk, I believe it's over to you.
So I would just request either a nay or a yay, and I will follow the rule. Councillor Bridgman?
Nay.
Councillor Edwards?
Nay.
Councillor Hayes?
Nay.
Councillor Jaglowitz?
Nay.
Councillor Kelly?
Nay.
Councillor Mazan?
Nay.
Councillor Nishikawa?
Nay.
Councillor Roberts?
Nay.
Councillor Zavitz?
Nay.
And Mayor Harding.
To make it unanimous, nay.
So that is unanimously defeated.
Thank you very much. And again, to Amy back, thank you for joining us this morning. We will let you get on with your day, but appreciate you being here. Okay, council and everyone. So what has happened, I think, as we've all watched the other municipalities, the 3 towns within the District of Muskoka stopped and said they all support status quo. The 3 townships have all now unanimously said, no, we do not support status quo. And each of them had introduced a second motion for consideration today. And I do have a resolution that's moved by Councillor Edwards and seconded by Councillor Zavitz. But to be able to put that resolution on the floor, we would need 2/3 consent of council. So at this particular point, I'll ask council if we would be willing to consider a resolution by Councillor Edwards and Councillor Zavitz to consider another thing. So if I could have a show of hands.
Excuse me, Mr. Mayor, there's a motion prepared to consider in order to receive a 2/3 vote to put the second motion on the table.
Okay, I don't have that in front of me. So, oh, sorry, I do have it. It was at the back of my agenda package. My apologies.
Sorry.
Okay, so moved by Councillor Edwards, seconded by Councillor Zavitz. Whereas section 3.5.1.6 the Township Procedural Bylaw 2019-79 provides that any motion may be introduced without notice to council, without debate, dispense with notice by a 2/3 vote. Now therefore be reserved that Township Council hereby dispense with notice to consider and vote on a new motion with respect to the District Council composition review. Have I met all the legal proceedings, Madam Clerk? We're good. I'll now call the vote. All those in favor? Anyone opposed? I think that's unanimous, Madam Clerk.
I did not see Councillor Nishikawa's vote.
And are you in favor, Councillor Nishikawa, or
Yeah,
opposed?
sorry. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, thank you very much. Madam Clerk, maybe we could put that resolution on the screen and I can go through with council where it's at. I believe it follows for the most part, and certainly where it's going. I appreciate the work of many to and those that have gone before us to put this forward. And I'll just read it, I think, for everyone and those listening. So it is moved by Councillor Edwards, seconded by Councillor Zavitz, whereas the District of Muskoka recently underwent a review of council composition. And whereas District Council passed a motion to remain with status quo of 22 councillors that did not reach unanimous consent among all of council. And whereas the Township of Muskoka Lakes rejects the motion to remain status quo with 22 councillors. And whereas status quo with 22 councillors does not equal a fair distribution of seats when representing the population of the lower tier municipalities. And whereas the District of Muskoka is made up of distinct populations, including seasonal and permanent, urban and rural, each requiring effective representation. And whereas the 6 lower tier municipalities within the District of Muskoka are generally equally split between each of the distinct populations. And whereas the District of Muskoka has recently agreed that all residents, regardless of distinction, should be considered equal when counting population. And whereas equality and consensus building is a key mandate of collective governments. And whereas a reduction of council size and efficiency in government is a goal of modernization and a common element of both of the failed district modernization resolutions. And whereas the District of Muskoka's Modernization Committee throughout its mandate offered 3 unanimous resolutions regarding equal representations from the lower tier municipalities, including resolutions R6, R12, and R16. And whereas equal seats, equal number of councillors from each lower tier municipality promotes equality and consensus building, while at the same time equally distributing the workload. Now therefore be it resolved that the Township of Muskoka Lakes requests that the Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing exercise his powers to implement change at the District of Muskoka based on the following criteria. 1, the District Council should consist of 19 members, comprised of the head of council, hereinafter referred to as the district chair, and the mayor of each lower tier municipality in the district, and 2 members elected at large or by ward from each lower tier municipality. And 2, that the district chair shall be appointed by the members of district council. And we can take that back off the screen at this particular time. And we'll go back to our Zoom screen. Thank you very much. And for those watching, that is basically, and especially the recommendation that the now therefore be it resolved is in exact sync with those from Georgian Bay and those from Lake of Bays. Any comments or questions on the resolution that's on the floor? Councillor Kelly.
Thank you, and through you, I have, you'll have to bear with me here because I want to make sure I understand not only what we're doing, I think I got a handle on that, but why we're doing it. My instinct or my understanding is that we are hoping to provide a bit of a roadmap to the minister to the extent that he needs to get involved in the affairs of the district and make some decisions, that he will have guidance from this township. I'm not worried about others as to what we think would be a good place to start, a good direction to take. I think that's what we're trying to accomplish. And if that's what we're trying to accomplish, I got to start off, and I do have other questions. What's the range of possibility here? What could happen after we pass this resolution? I know we always get hung up on what's likely to happen. I'm less worried about that. I'm more worried about what could happen, because I think we need to make sure we build a resolution that supports all the possible outcomes, not just the one we think is going to happen.
Okay, thank you for that. I'm going to try and take a stab at answering that. And the ministry has mandated a council composition review. Under their jurisdiction, they have said if we fail that triple majority test, they can, not that they will, but they do have the power to step in and mandate a change. They may, they not shall, they may at this particular point. So there are only certain things within the ministry's powers, if you will. They can't come in here and say that immediately Mayor Harding is removed or so on and so forth, or that services change. They are strictly talking about the representation, the numbers of people at the upper tier council, and they could theoretically go forward, I believe, and offer changes to lower tiers, or they would probably suggest that we have to make our own changes accordingly if we're sending fewer people or more people to the upper tier. But they could, at the minister's discretion, provide a recommendation to how we go forward. So from a possible outcomes, I think was your second part of your question, Councillor Kelly.
Yeah.
Number one, the minister may say, status quo, not changing a thing. Number two, the minister may say, okay, we've seen a number of resolutions for 18 councillors. You guys go back, you have 30 days, find your own solution to how 18 councillors would look across the district of Muskoka. They may come back and say 18 is not good enough, you're going to 12 councillors. Basically, the minister has a blank sheet of paper to the number of councillors that would represent the district of Muskoka and would provide, I'm assuming, some recommendations as to how they see fit. They may come back again and say, we believe it's X. How are you going to fit it out? How do you fit up the numbers of councillors from each lower tier? And they may put it back on us again. I don't have those answers specifically. And until, I think the concept of this is right now, the Township of Muskoka Lakes, and I agree with you, Councillor Kelly, this is about us. The Township of Muskoka Lakes has said, we disagree with 22 councillors. What the Township of Muskoka Lakes by this resolution would also say, we believe that 18 councillors with 3 representatives from each lower tier is the appropriate way forward. Oddly enough, that's exactly what Georgian Bay and Lake of Bays have said.
If I may, with a follow-up, I appreciate your input. Thank you. I understand the possibility that they could prescribe the size of a district council. And I don't think there's anything we need to do or should do to help. I mean, we told them it's 18. It is what it is. We'll figure out how to work with it. I think, or I'm asking, is there a possibility that in addition to council size, there could be direction from the minister as to how the voting is conducted, whether it's representation by population or whether it's even-handed? Because I have a different concern if the answer to that is yes.
I would suggest that that is within the ministry's purview as to how voting, especially if there are equal numbers, is administered.
And then my only comment is, in the whereas sections, we refer to seasonal population and full value. We talk about equality, but in the possibility, in the range of possibility that the minister comes back and says, we're going to have rep by pop, I think it would be incumbent upon us to give some direction as to what our pop is. I mean, 52 years later, we still really don't know. I don't believe we know an appropriate method to tabulate the totality of our seasonal and permanent residents. Permanent residents, that's handled by the federal census. And I think we need to prescribe something similar to that with a little bit of ground rules on how you count people so that we have a better handle on the actual weight of our seasonal residents in the possibility, in the likelihood, not likelihood, but in the eventuality that the minister comes back and prescribes some kind of representative voting by population. We just kind of don't deal with that issue, and I think we should.
So in effect, Councillor Kelly, I think our recommendation right now is that of equal representation. 3-3-3-3.
I'm trying to build this thing so that the possibilities are covered, not just the likelihood.
So, and I appreciate it, but we're putting forth a recommendation. The ministry may come back, as I say, and go to 12. They may change the number of councillors. We are suggesting, our recommendation is equality with 3 councillors from each of the lower tiers. No comment on voting, not anything else. If the ministry wanted to go somewhere else, then that's a conversation. And I do believe, frankly, that the ministry is not going to be a dictatorship. They would suggest this is where we're going, and we would have an opportunity to combat, to discuss going forward. When you talk about representation by population as a trigger, in every scenario that I have seen from a district counting, no matter how you count the people, the Township of Muskoka Lakes has more representatives. That's a given. It's a stated fact, which would provide, if votes are apportioned accordingly, Muskoka Lakes would have the most votes and the most seats going forward. So I think we're going to be covered off on how we count. I agree with you that there's a bigger issue of quote unquote counting going forward. And I think ultimately, and it was a discussion at one point, there wasn't time, but to do an actual census of our seasonal population to understand the various municipalities. And all I can say is that would be a discussion, I believe, with the ministry, should they put in something other than equal representation.
And I don't know how these things get delivered to the minister. Do they just go kind of naked as a resolution, or is there kind of a covering letter that says, possibly, if you decide to take some steps that we haven't anticipated, we request the opportunity to intervene, because we can't guess all the possible permutations and calculations that the minister will apply. And we need to have the ability to craft a useful answer, not just an answer.
So if I can, and I'm going to move on to our next speaker, and we can circle back if we can, Councillor Kelly, what I can tell you that Minister Clerk, Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing, is our partner. He is responsible for all 440 municipalities. There's a working relationship that will happen between the Municipality of Muskoka Lakes as well as the ministry. They will start a dialogue. This is what I'm thinking. They may have to at one point rule, but it's not, our conversation is a resolution that will go to the ministry And they will sit back and say, okay, here's what we're thinking. They may just wash their hands of it. I honestly don't know. We're making a recommendation, but we're opening the door for additional dialogue. We don't have to have all that dialogue today. We don't have to do everything today. It's the starting point of an additional dialogue. And Minister Clerk, I know, will continue that dialogue with us. So I'm going to go, I saw Councillor Bridgman next.
Thank you, Mayor Harding. Two questions, if I could. The first one is in reference to what if we change this up somewhat? Does that actually take away from the 3 townships having a united front in terms of the ministry looking at us? And maybe my part 2, because I agree with Councillor Kelly. It's been 4 years or 3 years or whatever it is since rep by pop and seasonal were full time. And quite humbly, I suggest that the district never made any effort to really do a census count. And I think that's a downfall of the committee, to be quite honest with you. Is there some way we can send a motion, maybe separately, to the district to say, you now have to do that? And then we're going to see what the real representation by population is, because I think that's what we really need to do. So first question, if we change this somewhat, my understanding would be we're still, the essence is the same, but we're adding in a few things that we'd like to see. So your comment?
Happy to comment. We have been asked by the ministry one question: do we agree or disagree with the district? We're going further in this particular case and saying, if you are going to decide, we are asking you to decide on 3 representatives from each municipality. That's our common ask, if you will, from the 3 townships going forward. I'll circle back to your comment about counting population. The district did make an attempt, because I can say 6 years ago when we started our modernization committee, or 4 years ago, I guess it was, we talked around, do we want the second home study? Do we want to use a voters list? Do we want to use whatever the property counts? There was a determination at that time to utilize the service of a company called Environics, who suggested they could do a cell phone count to determine public usage of my season, my permanent, whatever, to get an idea. What has happened, those numbers came forward. There was a decision in principle to use a combination between the second home study and the Environics data to balance. There's no question that the Township of Muskoka Lakes believes there are some issues with that modeling data, and that has not accurately reflected it. District Council has not yet approved that modeling data. So I think it is appropriate under separate resolution at time, doesn't have to be today, but that we could state our objections to that Environics data and request a census of sorts of our seasonal population. I would recommend that the district move forward with a census of seasonal population in tandem with the federal census, and that every 5 years, there's a new accurate count of population. So, but again, that I don't believe needs to happen today. Our resolution to the minister does not talk about counting population. It talks about equal representatives from each lower tier.
Okay, thank you. And yes, I would very much want to see that motion go forward, because I don't think either one of those studies are accurate or timely at this point in time. So that's my comment.
I appreciate that, and happy to move that forward as well. Councillor Zavitz? You're on mute, Glenn.
Oh, I got muted.
Your mic has been open. You just muted yourself.
Right. Excellent. So I think I want to just echo what's been said. Certainly the census piece is important. And in fact, I think if we were to put the our second resolution here that we're pondering now back up, you'd see it. I don't want to use the word brief, but it is definitely very succinct and to the point. It answers the question that the minister has asked of us, asked of the district. And so to you other councillors, when we were crafting this or were thinking about it very carefully, we thought we should be just that, very succinct, to the point, answer the question. I do, though, want to step aside for a second in that things like the census, things like a service review at the district. Are we getting value for our money? You know, some of these things are pondering our relationship, and that's part of our strategic plan thinking, et cetera. So, you know, we are on this journey. I think it's very important that we come out of this meeting with a commitment where we look each other in the face and we decide that we will, at that next meeting, a week, 2 weeks, actually put our arms around a larger, if you will, a larger paper about what it is that we do require. We didn't want to, I hate to say muddy the waters, but you know, if we answer the question and get the minister talking to us about our answer, then the rest of it can happen. And I think that's this underlying piece. I don't want you to think personally, I don't believe we've left anything out, because I know we're going to cover a lot of ground as a result of this response today. And I hope that we have a commitment as a group that, you know, essentially we're committed to that down the road, sooner than later. Thank you.
Okay, so I would agree with that. And I will make a commitment to this council that we will forthwith bring a discussion with some potential resolution to a larger scale questions as our interaction. I have Councillor Jaglowitz next. Where did Frank go?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Again, having trouble with my mute button. Interesting conversation. You indicated, Mr. Mayor, that and others have indicated that this is a yes/no answer. In other words, the district made a motion that we have status quo. We were asked to vote it up or vote it down. And we did, we voted it down. But now we're coming in with a supplementary motion. And this supplementary motion is going beyond what the minister asked for. And by the way, I agree with the supplementary motion. I don't disagree with it. What I do disagree with is us leaving it where it is. In other words, what we're telling the minister by doing this is that's our beef. Representation is our beef. And I don't believe that to be true. I believe representation is part of what we're concerned about. And we have other concerns. And I think that people have said it's not appropriate to do them at this time. But I believe it is appropriate. And not to do them in detail, but to give the minister a indication of where we're going, where we're thinking. Now, I watched the entire Georgian Bay thing, and that was a big part of their discussion. They indicated that the things that were of concern to them, they actually added something into their motion, although not in the action part, but in the whereas. And they also made a commitment to meet and send a second communication to the minister within 30 days at their next meeting, which I assume was 30 days. So before we leave this topic, I would just like to put something on the table for discussion, and I think that's what this is about. It's a discussion, and it's my belief that we should include something more in this, and I'll give you an idea of what I'm thinking, and then you can possibly discuss it and see if it's appropriate or at all.
So, Councillor Jaglowitz, are you proposing an amendment to this resolution?
Right now, I'm discussing it, Mr. Mayor.
Okay.
Am I allowed to?
So it's some high level, we're talking about the resolution, absolutely, but I'm just wondering if it's an amendment that you're talking about specifically to the resolution?
Well, I'm asking that my fellow councillors enter into a discussion as to whether or not, and I believe it was raised by others, I believe about counting the population, and it was decided that could be done separately and so on. So I'd like to have that discussion if you don't mind.
So again, I'm happy to we have a resolution that's specifically on the floor that has been read.
Correct.
There's some, I'm allowing some other discussion to say, is that enough? But if, again, if Councillor Kelly wanted something different in that resolution, he can propose an amendment. So I'm happy to let the general conversation sort of go in and around this, because we are talking about all things modernization, and I agree with that. But I still want to stay focused on the resolution on the table.
Okay.
So is there a general topic that you believe is missing from this right now, or should we have another discussion about something else?
No, I believe there is a topic that's missing. Yes, and I would like to discuss it. If you are you saying to me as chair, which you have the right, that before I discuss it, I would have to bring forward a resolution? Is that what you're saying, sir?
Well, I'm happy to entertain a high-level topic at this particular point, but I'm going to try and narrow it down at one point and say, do you have a specific amendment required or requested?
I have a specific concept for an amendment, yes.
Okay, I will let you bring it up at this particular point.
Okay, am I allowed to have it displayed on the screen?
No.
Okay, okay. So what I would like members to think about, and again, that's, you may have asked, why did I ask that silly question at the beginning of the meeting? And that was to sort of indicate that we have not had a lot of time ourselves to talk about. This is our message to the minister. And I think we should think about what we want to say to him. And I know we can send something later on and we can do all of that, but this is going to be a file that somehow gets to him or his senior people. And I'd like to have more in this file. And so what I would like to do is to put something into the effect that we ask the minister to meet with the township, say within the next 90 days, to review a submission and a plan to reduce duplication and increase efficiency. And so what I'm suggesting is that we take the next 90 days, staff, and come up with what we think would be appropriate modernization concepts that the district didn't come up with. And the reason I'm bringing this forward is because the district couldn't even decide on council composition. So there's no way in the world that they're going to make any substantial changes to the arrangement with us. It's going to have to come from the minister. And so I have a very simple asking the minister to meet with us within 90 days and then explain to the minister why we'd want to meet. And basically, we're asking him to use his powers to make change at the district to ensure that the township is receiving fair and good value for its financial contribution to the district for roads, planning and policy services, public services, property assessment, and health unit, long-term care and hospital funding.
Okay, so Councillor Jagged, it seems very specific you have, which I appreciate, and I appreciate the background work. Do you have a seconder for that motion?
I haven't raised the motion yet. I'm discussing it, but if you want, I will ask for one. Is that what you want, Mr. Chair, or can I
think that you're very specific in the wording and the language you'd like to put forward. So,
but Mr. Mayor, you asked me to be specific.
No, I asked you actually to be general about what you wanted to talk about, and not be specific.
So what I ask, Mr. Mayor, is whether there's anyone else on council that would like to discuss this topic today, or possibly discuss when this topic could be discussed or how it could be discussed. Is there any appetite to have a genuine discussion about the things that we believe, and as Councillor Zavitz, the seconder to the motion, indicated, it's part of our strategic plan that we do this. And I have absolutely no confidence that the district will do anything on these matters. And to say that that the modernization at the district will somehow come up with something that makes significant change will not happen. So I believe this is our opportunity to ask the minister to come and meet with us. And by the way, this is a similar request that Georgian Bay has made. They did not put it in their motion. And I'll tell you why they didn't. It's because
so that's a little bit presumptuous to say why they didn't put it in their motion, unless you had a conversation with Mayor Kelly, Mayor Akutsier going forward.
Well, I can say that nobody had prepared wording. So what they did is they started, and the clerk started to type it on the screen and put it in, and then it kind of drifted into oblivion because there had been nothing prepared. Now I have prepared something, and if anybody's interested in discussing it, or
So I will ask specifically again right now, Councillor Jagowitz, what I've heard around the table, and I'm going to go to then Councillor Kelly and then Councillor Nishikawa just to chime in on this topic right now. What I've heard around this table is a desire to understand more, to push for some more information. And the commitment, and I've said that we will deal with that. We'll deal with Environics data. We'll deal with all of our other bigger asks, all things regional government related. We do have, as you pointed out in our strategic plan, service review. It's part of the terms of the reference within our modernization committee that phase 2 of this. And for those who listen to Bracebridge, Mayor Smith commented that that is our next phase, is to do all things service review and understand how that goes forward. It's in our strategic plan as well. So it is obviously a next step. We can crystallize that. My specific question, again, you obviously don't have someone to second the motion today. You're going to ask that question if somebody would second your motion. But I'm going to go to Councillor Kelly first of all, and then I'll circle back.
You raised some issues, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to understand what you said. Did you say that you're prepared to give directions to staff today to have these matters brought forward to us in a timely manner, say within 90 days, so that we can move forward with some presentation to the minister on these matters? Is that what I hear you saying?
I will 100% commit that we will provide direction from this council with all things, issues, questions, problems, if you will, Muskoka modernization that can be forwarded under separate letter and cover. I truly believe that this resolution should stand alone and not be muddied with a whole bunch of other things. They've asked us one question.
Who will those be forwarded to, Mr. Mayor?
We can forward them to the ministry, whoever we decide.
Okay, and can that be done within a short period of time?
You absolutely.
Like, for example, I see this as 2 phases, Mr. Mayor. I see one as putting the minister on notice that we would like to meet with him within a time period, and then we have time to research. I don't think we should take 3 or 6 months, because I think it's a hot topic today. So if we could, after this resolution today, if we could then entertain a second resolution, that would make sense to me.
Okay, so I think Councillor Jagowitz, as your comment of understanding, again, I don't know if anybody else has seen your resolution or is willing to move it, but I'm going to go to Councillor Kelly right now, and then we're going to try and circle back because I want to deal. We have one resolution on the floor, and I have already committed that we will deal with your concept, and also Councillor Kelly's concept and Councillor Bridgman's concept about all things Muskoka modernization that we believe are bigger issues outside of, do we agree with the district or not? Councillor Kelly.
Okay, thank you. And through you, let me see if I can help here. I did have the benefit of a couple of conversations with Councillor Jagowitz yesterday and last night. I've had the benefit of seeing his proposed resolution. And I will tell you that I will not second it today, but I will second it at the next opportunity. Presumably we would be at our council meeting in next month. We need this discussion to take place. We need to take it it needed to take place in a full and complete form. Nothing should be off the table. I'm going to tell you, and I'll keep it as really tight here. I don't even need to look at who is involved in the modernization process. I only need to look at 2 things: the results and the process. When this thing started, when I heard that after 52 years, we were actually doing this self-examination, statutorily mandated, with the assistance of a good team of people and outside resources and so on, I thought there was any number of ways that this could work out to our advantage. There was only one wrong answer, and that was status quo. And here we are today, dealing with the only wrong answer that could have been presented to us. So back it up. I don't think the process is designed, or when it was designed, I don't think the process will ever work. as long as this decision is left with that committee. I think we owe it to our constituents of the township of Muskoka Lakes. And as much as I, admire the other 5 municipalities and know many of their members, I don't care what they're doing. We need to look out for our constituents, and we are not well served presently, I don't think. Maybe I'll be happily surprised when we have a deep dive and look at this. So I think it needs to happen. But Councillor Jaglowitz, you pointed out that yesterday, I believe it was George and Bay, you said there was a failure because they weren't really prepared. They were trying to craft it on the fly. Your resolution is going to fail today for the same reason. Let's give it time. Let's get it in front of a group of people who've had a chance to think about it and get prepared for it and deal with it head on without any questions or doubt. I just don't think it's ready for prime time. I think now is the time, as the mayor has suggested. We've already dealt with phase 1. We rejected status quo. Now we have to craft something which I think needs to deal not only with the size, but the voting rights of the council that we want to see by default if the minister decides to exercise his authority, which he might. And I just want to make sure we're protected on those fronts. We'll circle back and we'll deal with the with the whole service issue and the fairness of the budgeting and the fairness of the cost allocation. That's another day. And that's a day when we're all better prepared than we are now to focus on it.
Right. So Councillor Kelly, let me just comment, and Councillor Jaglowitz. I also see Councillor Zabit's hand is up, and that's actually timely because of my suggestion. And I am going to suggest that we put this as a topic and an item for discussion on our next General and Finance Committee meeting. We can vet all of our yes and no's, so on and so forth. But I'm going to ask that we stay focused on the topic today. And I realize it's timely. There's no question. I want to provide one comment as we move forward with this, and we're making some requests of the ministry at this particular time, but understand that we're asking the ministry to solve our problems. Remember that 2 years ago, the ministry stepped in and said, we're going to solve your problems. We're going to tell you all what to do. They hired consultants, they did analysis, and they said, we can't decide. So I put that out there at this particular point. So I don't doubt that there was some issues and confusions at the District of Muskoka. And, our committees made some recommendations. District Council turned it down. And I want to be careful not to throw babies out with the bathwater. There was a lot of work. There was a lot of discussion. There was a lot of healthy discussion. Nobody likes the ultimate outcome, let me say. So again, Councillor Jaglowitz, if you're okay, as someone who would like to introduce the topic, and Councillor Kelly, I saw a number of heads that said if we were to bring this back to General and Finance and we can have a more fulsome discussion, I would suggest, Councillor Jaglowitz, that you share some of your ideas in advance, not having council discussions ahead of time, but just put some concepts on the table so that we can have that fulsome discussion come General and Finance Committee. I'm seeing circulation and nods of heads to movement forward there. Thank you. Councillor Jaglowitz, a final comment, and then I'm going to probably call the question on this resolution. Frank?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That was what I was attempting to accomplish, to have this on the table. I fully agree. I will support this motion as it is written. And I look forward to those discussions. I think I agree with Councillor Kelly. He has made some good statements. As you know, I'll say one last thing, and that's, as you know, it's not the first time I've raised this at this council, okay? But I believe it's time for action, and I appreciate Councillor Kelly's staying as a hound dog on this thing to get it to move forward. So thank you, Mr. Mayor, for allowing me the latitude to bring it up.
Absolutely. And I'll say if we have too many of these hound dogs on our council, we're going to have to get a dog license because we're only allowed 3 dogs per household. Any further comments? You've all heard the resolution. I'll call the question. All those in favor? Madam Clerk, I'm pretty comfortable that that is unanimous in favor. Thank you very much. Council, appreciate it. I have 2 more resolutions, if we may. Moved by Counselor Hayes, seconded by Counselor Jaglowitz. Be it resolved that bylaw 2021-145 to confirm the proceedings of council be read a first, second, and third time and finally passed. All those in favor? That is carried. And one final one. Moved by Counselor Kelly, seconded by Counselor Mazan. Be it resolved that this meeting adjourn at 9:58 a.m. All those in favor? That's carried. Thank you all very much. Appreciate the dialogue and I look